Warriors in shock. Bombshell decision stuns the players. Imagine waking up, opening your phone, and discovering that your team made a decision that no one understood. That's exactly what's happening with the Golden State Warriors right now. If you are a fan and are tired of seeing the board playing with the squad, keeping the wrong player, and ruining the season, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to show you what's really behind this decision, how it affected the players behind the scenes, and most importantly, what needs to change for this team to become feared in the NBA again. Before I tell you what's really going on behind the scenes, here's what's going on. Subscribe to the channel now, because here, you will always find out about the Warriors news before anyone else. Leave a like because this shows YouTube that you are a real warrior and helps me bring you even more content. Activate the bell so you don't miss any bombs, any exchanges, any controversy. Do that quickly below, and let's go to the video, because what I'm going to show you now could completely change the way you see this franchise's decision. What I'm going to talk to you about today has the potential to completely change the way we see the NBA in the coming years. It's not an exaggeration. If this scenario actually comes to fruition, we will be talking about the most impactful move since that summer of 2016, when the entire league stopped to watch the balance of power shift before our eyes. First of all, welcome to Warriors News Fan Report. Here is not just a news channel. It is a meeting point for those who breathe Golden State Warriors every day. If you follow every game, suffer from every defeat, vibrate with every three-pointer from Stephen Curry, and feel like you are part of this story, then this space was made with you in mind. Today I want you to stay with me until the end, because what is at stake is not just an exchange. It is not just one rumor among many others. We are talking about a possibility that could redefine the future of the franchise, reopen our title window on another level, and at the same time, cause a domino effect throughout the league. Let's start with the present. The Warriors entered this season with a very clear objective: not to treat Stephen Curry's recent high-level years as ordinary. Curry continues to play at an MVP pace, commanding the attack, leading the locker room, and keeping alive the standard of excellence that made Golden State a global benchmark. The board, knowing this, decided to act. The arrival of Jimmy Butler brought exactly what the team had been missing: someone capable of contributing with defensive intensity and offensive decision in the toughest moments. Someone with a strong, competitive mentality who doesn't shy away from big games. Draymond Green remains the team's defensive heart, the vocal leader who organizes the defense, calls out accountability, and does the dirty work that often doesn't show up on the box score, but that decides playoff series. When the franchise moved to bring in Butler, the message was clear: let's not passively watch Curry's prime pass by. Let's try once again to build a squad capable of fighting for the title and not just participating in the playoffs. But the reality of today's NBA is relentless. The Western Conference is unforgiving. On one side, the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic leading an extremely well-connected team. On the other, the Lakers still have great media and technical power. The Suns with a trio of stars capable of deciding games in sequence. And, emerging as new forces, young groups like the Timberwolves and Thunder with energy, talent, and time on their side. In an environment like this, having one star is no longer enough. Having two is sometimes not enough either. The last few seasons have shown, somewhat cruelly, that you need multiple players capable of taking control of a series if you want to play on the top floor. That's exactly what the Warriors' last participation in the playoffs revealed. The defeat to Minnesota in the second round in 5 games, even with home control, was more than a stumble. It was a sign. Some limits in the construction of the squad appeared very clearly: physical difficulty in certain confrontations, lack of responses in key moments, lack of another dominant force capable of changing the course of a game just by impact on the court. And it is in this context that the conversation I want to have with you comes into play. While we discussed rotation, drafts, and tactical adjustments, behind the scenes around the league, a silent unease was growing elsewhere. Milwaukee. There, one of the most dominant players the NBA has ever seen, a 2-time MVP, champion, and Finals MVP, voted Defender of the Year, and for many, already among the greats in history, was facing a difficult situation to swallow. After the memorable title in 2021, when the Bucks beat the Phoenix Suns in 6 games and that squad finally reached the top, the natural expectation was for continuity, that this would be just the first chapter founder of an era. However, what was seen next was a painful contrast. Elimination after premature elimination, changes of parts, attempts to adjust, but without reaching the level of true title contender again. In 3 full playoff campaigns since winning the title, Milwaukee has failed to advance consistently. For a player at his peak, who delivers elite numbers, who gives himself on both sides of the court, and who, in many games, seems to carry the team on his shoulders, this reality is difficult to accept. It is at this point that something more sensitive begins to emerge: doubt. According to behind-the-scenes reports, this star seriously considered the possibility of asking for a trade. It wasn't a momentary whim. It wasn't an impulsive reaction after a defeat. It was a deep reflection on his own legacy, on how many years of high level he will still have, on the possibility of seeing part of this period wasted on projects that do not, in fact, reach the level of a champion team. In the end, he opted to try one more time in Milwaukee, but the simple fact that this thought has become so concrete says a lot. A player at this level doesn't question the direction of the franchise without reason, and that's exactly where Golden State enters history. The Warriors' front office isn't just watching all this from afar. For some time now, internally, hypothetical scenarios have been discussed in case this star finally decides that he needs a new chapter. It's not about dreaming for the sake of dreaming. It's planning work. There is scenario study, trade simulation, analysis of which pieces could be involved, how to make an offer attractive enough for Milwaukee, and at the same time, viable for the Warriors in terms of the squad, future, and salary cap. In agreements of this size, a third team almost always enters the scene to adjust contracts, absorb players, and balance the value given to those who lose their main star. An important detail makes Golden State an even more interesting destination in this conversation. Both Stephen Curry and this star are represented by the same agency. This facilitates contact, aligns expectations, opens the door for conversations about fit, career vision, and sporting goals. When interests converge, certain situations that would seem impossible become at least debatable. Another relevant point: this player's contract does not include an exchange veto clause. Formally, the team can trade him without his permission, but here comes the practical reality of the NBA. No team is willing to sacrifice years of draft picks, young talent, and roster flexibility for a player who makes it clear he doesn't want to be there. Therefore, even without a clause, his will weighs heavily on any decision. From a financial point of view, the difficulty is evident. We are talking about a very high salary, something that forces any interested team to send back a considerable volume of contracts so that the league's rules are complied with. There is no room for simple exchanges. It is always a big puzzle, which requires creativity, willingness to give up important pieces, and at the same time, coolness, so as not to completely compromise the future. And it is exactly this dilemma that accompanies any conversation about Giannis Antetokounmpo's possible arrival at the Golden State Warriors. Yes, that's who we're talking about. Now, I want you to imagine with me calmly what this would mean in terms of basketball. On one side, you have Stephen Curry, the player who revolutionized the way we play, who forces defenses to score almost from the halfway line, who punishes any inattention with a three-pointer that changes the atmosphere of a game in seconds. On the other, Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the most physically dominant athletes to ever play in the league, a player capable of attacking the rim with a combination of strength, speed, and wingspan that few defenses in history have been able to contain. Put these two on the same court, with space, with an intelligent offensive system, with complementary players around them. What begins to emerge is something very far from the normal of the NBA. In the pick and roll, for example, imagine the defense trying to choose the lesser evil. If a center switches to guard Curry, it opens up an avenue for Steph to explore one-on-one play against a slower defender. If the defense tries to get under the block, Curry has a relatively free shot, and we know what that usually results in. If the attempt is to double Steph, Giannis receives the ball by cutting to the basket with freedom, attacking a disorganized box. In practice, you create a scenario in which the defense is always reacting, rarely controlling. And in playoff series, this type of imbalance tends to increase game by game. On the other side of the court, the impact would be equally profound. Giannis offers rim protection, lateral mobility, ability to guard multiple positions. Draymond Green adds reading, communication, anticipation. Together, in a system that favors defensive exchanges and well-executed help, they could transform the Warriors into one of the most difficult defenses to attack in the league. In postseason games, when the pace slows, possessions gain even more weight, and each basket is won with effort, having a combination of offense and defense at this level makes all the difference between just competing and truly dominating. Of course, from Milwaukee's point of view, giving up a player like Giannis would only come into question if he himself understood that he needed a new scenario. In this hypothesis, the franchise's focus would be to obtain the maximum possible return. Young people with real potential for growth, veterans capable of maintaining a minimum of competitiveness, and above all, a large set of draft picks and pick swaps that would allow the squad to be reconstructed over the following years. Detroit, or any other third team involved, would step in as a strategic participant, receiving an impact player like Jimmy Butler, and in return, helping to balance the equation financially and technically. For a team undergoing reconstruction, having a veteran with a strong personality who competes at a high level and raises the bar for the locker room could be just the missing step to start changing levels. From Golden State's side, the message would be clear. We are willing to go to the limit to transform this era into something even greater. It would be an all-or-nothing movement, in the best sporting sense of the expression, giving up draft picks for many years, promising young players, and an important part of the current rotation brings obvious risks. The future is more tied to a specific core. The margins for error decrease. The next casting decisions become even more delicate. But at the same time, the potential reward is gigantic. Bringing together two players of historic caliber in a still productive phase of their careers, in a structured organization, with a coach accustomed to dealing with stars and a history of recent success. Think about the impact on the rest of the Western Conference. Nuggets, Lakers, Suns, Timberwolves, Thunder, everyone would have to rethink their plans, adjust the squad, review priorities. The fight would no longer be just about the title. It would also be about finding answers for a duo that, on paper, seems capable of unbalancing any series. For Giannis personally, the move would mean the chance to compete for not just one, but several additional titles in an environment that has already proven itself to be able to build championship teams. He would have at his side one of the greatest players of all time, a group with experience in finals, a fan base accustomed to experiencing great moments, and an organization that demonstrates, year after year, that it is willing to invest heavily to keep the team competitive. Now, bringing all of this closer to you, as a fan, as someone who follows the team's daily life, how do you see this perspective? On the one hand, there is the almost inevitable fascination of imagining Curry and Giannis playing together. It's hard not to be excited about this possibility. On the other hand, there is a legitimate fear of seeing young people like Brandon Podziemski, future picks, and even important names in the rotation leave, and the franchise will have less room for maneuver up front. That's the big question I want to leave with you. To what extent is it worth sacrificing part of the future in the name of a 3, 4, 5-year window in which the team can, in fact, dominate the league again? Each person will have an answer. Some will say that you can't waste the chance to bring two players of that level together in the same squad. Others will argue that it is better to preserve choices, maintain a certain stability, and try to gradually grow around what already exists. The most important thing, in my view, is to understand that this moment is decisive, not just because they are gigantic names, but because it reveals the franchise's stance towards its own history. The Warriors have shown in the past that they are not afraid to make bold decisions when they see a real title opportunity. Kevin Durant's arrival is the best example of this. There was criticism, there was resistance from part of the public, but from a sporting point of view, the result was undeniable. More championships, more finals, another layer of legacy built. Now, with Giannis as the possible protagonist of a new mega movement, the franchise finds itself once again at a crossroads. Keep the current course, trying to adjust the squad around Curry, Butler, Draymond, and company, or try something that could completely change the team's status for the next few years. While the conversations remain in the field of hypothesis, it remains for us to follow, analyze, debate, and prepare for any developments. Whether it's a more conservative path or a bold step towards a new super team configuration, what is clear is that Golden State does not intend to go through this phase of Stephen Curry's career with a passive stance. And that is precisely why this topic deserves so much attention. Because after all, we're not just talking about numbers, contracts, and exchanges. We're talking about legacy, history, and how we want to remember this era when we look back in a few years. If this movement happens, it will not be just another footnote. It will be a milestone. If it doesn't happen, it will still have shown how far the franchise is willing to go to remain among the greats. Meanwhile, I'm here, by your side, following every piece of information that emerges, analyzing the scenarios and bringing this type of reflection so that you can form your opinion calmly, with context, and with the depth that a passionate fan deserves. So that's it. Either the Warriors are content with being one more among the good ones, or they accept the risk of taking the step that could recreate a new dynasty in the NBA. We are facing one of those moments when a right or wrong decision changes an entire chapter in the franchise's history. If this all really starts to move behind the scenes, you'll remember this video as the point at which the conversation began. And I want you with me every step of the way. Now, if you want to delve even deeper into all of this, fits, exchange scenarios, tactical impact, future of the franchise, the next step is simple. Go straight to the Warriors Analyses playlist in the pinned comment. There, I only separated the videos where we go deep behind the scenes. The management's movements, the squad changes, and everything that can bring the Warriors closer or further away from another title. Finish this video, scroll down in the comments, click on the Warriors Analyses playlist, and marathon with me. If the Golden State Warriors' future is about to explode, you don't want to watch it from the sidelines.